name is Adam Heayberd, and I am an editor. So I do post-production. I have done for well over 10 years now. I did get into production way before that. I studied broadcast journalism and then went down the avenue of junior assistant producer, assistant producer. I have produced and directed as well, through all different formats, from a lot of TV work, broadcast TV, both here in the UK and in Ireland. And then by chance fell into editing, discovered that I preferred it, discovered I was good at it, or had a knack at it, and got lucky with a break and haven't really looked back since. Essentially, for quite a few years, I was milling around in production in London. I'd worked for ITV in Factual, working on, you might remember programs like Airline, which was the EasyJet program, and other programs such as like Neighbours and Tenants from Hell. Both those type of programs are horrible. Most of the time I was sat in Luton Airport waiting for someone to fall down in tears because they couldn't make a flight and then have to get a camera crew to film them. So that was horrible. And from that I got a lucky break into Question of Sport for BBC, and I was working as a kind of researcher, junior researcher role. That in itself was superb because it was another big credit, but this was a big credit. My tenure on the Question of Sport came to an end, and I kind of had more of a clearer path that I'm loving sport and I'm really enjoying the editing side of things. And I'd been pestering a number of production companies and none had really come back. And there was one company that came back and went, "Thanks very much, we'll keep you on file." But I pestered them again and again and again, half a dozen times or so. And eventually the production manager came back to me and she said, "Right, our kind of owner and executive is going to meet you in London. He wants to have a chat." He said, "We're opening up a production office in Belfast because we've just won the contract to MotoGP on BBC Sport. I'm looking for an in-house editor. Would you be interested?" And didn't even hesitate. And that was effectively that big chance where I spent many years bumping around, not quite sure what I wanted to do in production, and had started to kind of see some thread of what I wanted to do, and then got very lucky. And it is a lucky break, but it came from a lot of persistence, I guess. And basically, from there I never looked back. I went over to Belfast. I worked for several years as their in-house editor. I had a great mentor who was already kind of like a freelance BBC editor. He did a lot of stuff at BBC, but he was one of their top editors. So he kind of, in a way, guided me and mentored me as the standard to achieve. And I cut my teeth in that production company. Did a lot of cycling as well, a lot of OB cycling, so like the British equivalent of the Tour de France, which I still do, the Tour of Britain, which was an amazing challenge because that you're literally editing like a 45-minute highlights program, VT inserts that same day. They get played out live from the truck that you've been editing in, and then you have to go to the next stage, and that happens for 8 days. Worked on a documentary, and I basically had an absolute blast. And eventually I went freelance myself, and that was effectively the big break, and that kind of teed up the rest of my career. What I like about Northamptonshire, when I came here, I guess, was that I wasn't expecting anything. I was hugely impressed about what was available on the doorstep, not only in terms of people who are tucked away, such as I've made a very, very good friend in contact, Steve Nelson, who's an extremely good DOP. You've got a number of people tucked away like that, but the facilities, the landscape, it lends itself brilliantly. You've got incredible, effectively pre-built sets and so on, that you don't need to spend loads of money on. It's there. So I think as an area, Northampton provides a lot. It's kind of one of those untapped resources. Probably when I first moved to Belfast, the way Belfast was, people were only waking up to this realization that actually that could be a superb hub for filmmaking and TV production. And sure enough, Game of Thrones and etc. have parked themselves there. It's a kind of hidden gem of talent and facilities, which is what I really appreciate. And the space, because I've effectively built my edit suite at home that I work remotely from. And it's the space that it gives you, that kind of tranquility, which is quite lovely. It can take all types of personality types, I think, because everybody will have their own opinion or eye unique perspective on things. So it's not set for one type of person. Certainly in terms of skills, I know with directors I've worked with, they like an editor who can not talk back to them, but kind of say, I don't think this is quite working. I like the idea that you're trying to achieve, but it's just not going to happen. Maybe we look at this. So you definitely want to be able to have the skill base of at least offering ideas or being able to overcome those small challenges. Work out what you love. You can go into TV and you could be working in a department. You could go into history or science and you might hate science, or you might have no interest in history. On the flip side of it, you might be thinking, God, I love history, or I was really good at science and I enjoy that side of things. There are elements of television there. And actually having those passions and having that knowledge will gain you more than just understanding how a camera works. So certainly if you have a passion for something, maybe look as that as an avenue in, and certainly that will benefit you more. Instagram and TikTok are bad because people who edit on TikTok and Instagram for their stories suddenly go, I can edit now. And you're like, hold on a second. There's a lot more to post-production and editing than just, putting together a short 30 seconds on Instagram or TikTok. But it's a good place to be. It's a good place to start. I know there are apps like CapCut and all that are available. So, if you have, you've got TikTok or Instagram, you've actually got a piece of editing software there. And it's handy because what you can effectively do with that, if you've just got 60 seconds or 90 seconds, is you have a host of things available. You've already got a grading facility available effectively with filters there. You have music available to you. So in that thing, the challenge is to effectively, if you wanted to put this little short story together, it gives you a time limit. You've got 60 seconds to put a short story together. And that's a challenge in itself. So that's a good way to probably kind of start to get into the idea of when you put it into, you'll see, oh, I should have got this shot, or we could get this shot. Maybe we should have thought about this. And that in itself will help. And that's, I think, is probably a good way to start. As an editor, there's a lot of different reasons why it's worth it. If I'm working on an OB, it's such a massive kick. Say if I've been working on Match of the Day or the Olympics, seeing the footage go out, seeing the material go out, even if you're doing like what we call like a VT, which is like maybe a 3-minute interview where it's like we caught up with such and such, or you cut the opener to something or a closer. You've been able to inform, educate, but also orchestrate millions of people's emotions in a short space of time, and that's a pretty epic feeling, to be honest with you. So that in itself is worth it. Working on documentaries as well, people invest that time into that type of storytelling, to be able to tell that story, to shock, surprise, make people laugh, cry. Again, it's a wonderful feeling.